It is going to be another big recruiting weekend for the University of Louisville football program. We will talk about some of the key prospects that will be visiting over the next couple days, along with previewing this weekend's basketball action on this episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Stay tuned.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. I serve as a credential media member for Cardinal Sportszone, and I also do some PA announcing work for the university in various sports. I want to take this time, as always, to personally thank you for making us your first listen of the day. And I want to let you know that the Locked On Louisville podcast is free on all streaming services, 5 days a week, your team every day. The Louisville football program having another big recruiting weekend over the next couple of days. We'll talk about some of the key prospects that will be on campus for their visits. We'll also preview the upcoming basketball action, beginning with the men's basketball senior day contest against the Virginia Cavaliers, and then the women's basketball ACC Tournament Quarterfinal matchup with the Miami Hurricanes. Starting out with the big recruiting weekend for the football program. It's the second big recruiting weekend of the 2022 calendar year. The first one obviously being at the very end of January, which saw a plethora of commits over a span of 4 to 5 days, starting out with the notable commitment of four-star quarterback Pierce Clarkson. A dead period followed throughout the month of February. Louisville is looking to continue that momentum in recruiting throughout the month of March into April and the spring game and stuff like that. But a big recruiting weekend that has been in the works seemingly since that first large recruiting weekend at the end of January. I think it's either 8 or 9. I think it's 8 four-star prospects will be on campus this weekend. One of those being four-star quarterback commit Pierce Clarkson. Having him being a huge recruiter for this program, not only on campus but also on social media, is a huge aspect and a huge asset, I guess you could say, to the recruiting effort, considering the fact that not only is he convincing some highly rated guys to make the trip to the Derby City, but also he's coming on unofficial visits to Louisville and helping recruit these guys in person and being on campus and getting closer with the coaching staff and stuff like that. So ultimately, I think that having him on campus means that much more, because not only do you have the social media aspect of it, which is more important now than it has ever been, but also now you can start to connect with some of these other recruits in person and form some bonds and try to recruit them a little further and be a little bit more effective in that approach. So Pierce Clarkson will be on campus. Most of the highly rated guys are on the offensive side of the ball, most notably at the wide receiver position. There is a good amount of highly touted prospects in the trenches, especially on the offensive line. I think that when you compare both of the weekends and put them side by side, I think that the first weekend may have had a little bit more star power, more 4 stars. But ultimately, 8 4-stars being on campus is big, and some highly rated 3-star guys as well. But I feel like this time around, there is more of a presence from offensive line recruits than there was the first time around. We'll start out talking about the wide receiver aspect of it. There are a handful of 4-stars, most notably, if you've been following along with the Louisville recruiting, you are likely aware of the name Deandre Moore Jr., the top 50 wide receiver. He is a 4-star decommitted from Oklahoma, I believe, in early February. He is on campus here at Louisville this weekend, which is big because, being from California, friends with Pierce Clarkson, getting him on campus. I actually think he might be back on campus. I think he made an unofficial visit in that big recruiting weekend in late January. I could be wrong, but I felt like he was in that group. If not, regardless, it's great to get him on campus. That's probably the most notable guy outside of Pierce Clarkson that the casual Louisville fan would recognize the name of, due to the fact that with him being a top 50 player in the 2023 class. But there are a handful of other, four-star wideouts. Pierce Clarkson's teammate at St. John Bosco, Jahlil McClain, a four-star wide receiver who is ranked just inside of the top 300. There is a Florida native William Foles, who's another four-star guy, 288th in the class. And you also have Kyle Parker, who was on campus the first time around in January. He's back on campus now. That's a great sign, fringe 3/4-star guy. So it's big to have him on campus also. So, and then you have to factor in not only is McLean, not only do you have McLean coming on campus, but there are other high school teammates of Clarkson's that will be at Louisville this weekend as well. Wide receiver Eric Denham is going to be on campus. Offensive lineman Raymond, I think it's Polito. Regardless, I apologize if I'm botching that name. But a handful of other guys. Madden Sanker, top 100 lineman in the class, high four-star guy, a guy that another prospect that Louisville fans are aware of from social media. He's shown the Cardinals love in terms of having the edits that have been sent out to him, the photo edits that, it seems like all the programs do of, the good luck posts and stuff like that. But he's been, very interactive with Pierce Clarkson and some other Louisville commits. So he will be on campus. Luke Burgess will be on campus, a high 3-star offensive lineman. Going on down the line, there's a couple more. Jordan Church, 6'4" interior offensive lineman who has been getting a lot of offers lately. And then just kind of moving on down the line, Zachary Amland, I think is how you pronounce it. There's just a handful of guys in the trenches. Tristan Cook as well. So on and so forth. It's very offense dominated this time around on this recruiting weekend, from the wide receiver position in the trenches. But there are some, highly rated guys on the defense that are coming in as well for this weekend. 4-star California cornerback Aaron Williams, who is from Corona, California. He will be in town this weekend. You also have some other guys like, I can't even think of the name at the moment. It'll come back to me. But Jeremiah Tellander will be on campus as well, 3-star linebacker. So I guess, you can go down the list. And if you want to see the full list of guys that will be on campus, you can check that out at CardinalSportszone.com. There's a high 3-star tight end, Jamari Johnson from Inglewood, California. You have a 4-star running back, Marquise Williams from Pennsylvania. So talent from all over the country. It's going to be a big weekend. If you can, score 1 to 2, maybe 3 commits over, the next handful of days following the weekend, I think that would be a huge success for the football program. But ultimately, I think it's, huge to get these guys on campus, especially those that are coming for, their second time to the Derby City, but also having, guys like Madden Sanker on campus. Top talent wants to play with top talent. Pierce Clarkson being here is a huge boost for the recruiting weekend. If it's anything like the first one, we are probably going to be in for some good news in terms of commitments and stuff like that. So like I said, full visitor list if you want to check that out. I'm sorry, it seemed like it didn't necessarily flow this segment. This segment didn't necessarily flow all that well, just because it's a lot of identifying names and stuff like that. But ultimately, hopefully, we can break down some commitments here at the beginning of next week. So you can check out the full visitor list at CardinalSportszone.com. We'll finish the episode, the next 2 segments, with basketball talk, beginning with the men's basketball senior day contest against the Virginia Cavaliers. We will talk about everything you need to know about that matchup here in just a second after we talk about our friends at Run Your Pool. Look, March Madness is really only a couple weeks away. That means you need to start thinking now about where you're going to be running your brackets this season. Along with standard brackets, Run Your Pool offers game types like Survivor or Pick X. Both are really fun in their own way. They have options to edit scoring, and they offer more intel to make your picks, all stuff you won't find at ESPN or CBS. Clearly, we believe Run Your Pool. Because like I said, we're running our brackets there ourselves. There's no truer test than that. If you want to play against us for a shot at a cash prize, join us at runyourpool.com/lockedon. And while you're there, create your own pool for your friends and family. Enter Pure Madness at checkout for $10 off your custom pool. That's runyourpool.com/lockedon for your chance to win a cash prize. I also want to take this time to talk about our friends over at Built Bar. It's kind of past the time of the year where I'm usually ready to give up on my resolutions, but right now I found myself continually going steady with the one that I have of eating right, and that can be contributed to Built Bar. It almost feels like it's not really even a resolution because I actually enjoy eating Built Bars. If you haven't tried the Puffs, they are the first ever protein-infused marshmallow. They're fluffy. They're not just a protein bar. They're a treat, and they're covered in 100% real chocolate, as are all of the Built Bar products. They are low-calorie, high in protein. You can go to Built.com and scroll down to the macros chart, and you'll be blown away. Compare them to a candy bar, and it's literally not even a contest. There are so many different flavors to choose from mint brownie, coconut, cookies and cream, etc. This month, the new white chocolate cookies and cream is the premier flavor. They're all delicious, and new flavors are coming out all the time. If they think a flavor might be good, they'll make it, and it will be delicious. And as always, it will be good for you. So do yourself a favor. Go to Built.com, use the promo code LOCKED15, and get 15% off your order. Once again, that's use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Thanks again for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Bracket Breakdown March 14th right here on the Locked On Louisville podcast feed and YouTube channel. College basketball experts Chris Gordy, Andy Patton, and betting expert Lee Sterling give you in-depth breakdowns on every matchup. Transitioning over into the men's basketball side of things, the Cardinals will end the regular season against the Virginia Cavaliers on Senior Day on Saturday, 12 o'clock tip-off time at the KFC Yum Center. The Cardinals looking to try to snap a losing streak with the Virginia Cavaliers. We talked on the first episode, or the preview episode, the first matchup. The Cardinals, I believe, have only won against the Cavaliers, 3 times? Is it 3 times that they've beaten Virginia? I think it's 3 times that they've beaten Virginia since joining the ACC. It's either 2 or 3 times. Like, they have not done it that much. Virginia is really kind of Louisville's kryptonite. The Cavaliers defeated the Cardinals 64-52 the first time around. And if you remember that first matchup, it was a struggle offensively to start the game. The team really couldn't get going to start out. I believe, after the first, I'm trying to go back to see the exact totals that it had, because it was something really crazy. The Cardinals, at the 6-minute mark left in the first half, Louisville had not crossed the 10-point threshold. So Louisville really struggled from the field. They actually ended up making this a game. They cut the halftime deficit to 12, went out on a little run to start the second half, cut the lead to, 4 or something like that. And Virginia ultimately kept, getting in front by a little bit more each time, and Louisville's effort to ultimately get on top by the end of the game was defeated. So it's one of those things to where you spend all of your effort and energy on trying to claw back into the game, and then once you kind of get within striking distance, the team that you're playing against kind of pushes the lead out a little further and makes you start the process all over again. Looking at some of the statistics from that first matchup that kind of bode well in terms of previewing this one. Obviously, the Cardinals did not necessarily play all that well. shot the ball under 40% from the field, 9 for 28 from the three-point line. Got out-rebounded by 9 total turnovers. They had only 7, so they didn't necessarily turn the ball over all that much. But the free throw aspect of things, they shot 3 free throws compared to Virginia's 14. And this is, as always, not necessarily a Virginia team that is one that we are accustomed to seeing. Tony Bennett has probably one of his least talented Virginia teams that he's had while being the the head coach in Charlottesville. They are 17-12 on the season. I don't think that they are in tournament consideration. If they are completely on the bubble. So this, in this matchup, you look at. I think that the main thing to look at is the fact that they're pretty comparable offensively. They both don't necessarily score a ton of points. It's in the low 60s, but Virginia allows, I think it's like 10 less points per contest than the Cardinals do, which is extremely crazy. In the past 5 games, the Cavaliers haven't necessarily been all that sharp. They have 3 losses in the past 5. Granted, 2 of those are, Duke and Virginia Tech. Virginia Tech's been playing very well. Duke is one of the best teams in the country. Florida State was a loss. Their 2 wins coming against Miami and against Georgia Tech. The Miami win looking pretty solid. So overall, the keys to the game for the Cardinals, number one, I think that the rebounding margin has to be more in the Cardinals' favor. They have to make it an effort to win on the glass. I think it was 9. It might have been 11, the rebounding margin the first time around. I think that kind of hurt them in the second half. The second chance points for Virginia, getting more even in that aspect of the game, being able to compete better on the glass. Winning the rebounding battle is the first aspect. The second one, and it's really kind of tough when you talk about Virginia, because Virginia is one of those teams that makes it so tough offensively. I mean, you could talk about, Louisville didn't necessarily shoot the ball all that well, yada, yada, yada. But you can't take away from the fact that Tony Bennett is one of the best defensive coaches in the country, if not the best. Virginia is always very, very solid defensively on ball. I think that for Louisville to win this game, not only are they going to have to do well on the glass, they're also going to have to do well from behind the arc. Obviously, 9 for 28 the first time around. I think that's good for like just over 32%. For Louisville, beating Virginia is going to have to be one of those to where it's not going to be pretty, because every time you play them, it's one of those games where it's like it's not necessarily all that fun to watch. But Virginia does what Virginia does very well. So being able to hit your outside shots, that gives you a better chance of winning this one. Obviously, Dalton, hitting threes is going to give you a better chance. But especially a team that does a very good job at defending three-point shots and defending in general, if you can get some consistency from behind the arc for a team that doesn't necessarily score that well in the Virginia Cavaliers, I think that it really kind of bodes well, more so for this matchup than, let's say, a lot of the previous ones in the past in terms of other teams down the stretch for Louisville in the ACC play. So key players to watch for the Cardinals. The one that I have in mind, I think that this is a game for Sydney Curry, because we talked about, three-point shooting, what does that have to do with Sydney Curry? Well, not too awful much, but I think his emergence, especially on the offensive end, it gives you almost a kind of a number one scoring option. We talked about the lack of a number one scoring option, especially. This really is important for this matchup, because you need that in games against Virginia, and not having that really can hurt your chances. But having Sydney Curry, who's kind of filled that void over the past month or so, having him playing his best basketball, and not only from a scoring aspect, but also on the glass, rebounding the ball, that's an aspect that I think that Sydney Curry is going to do a solid job in tomorrow against Virginia. So Sydney Curry is my player to watch for. I think that he's going to have a solid game, and if he has a pretty solid game, then I'm not going to say I feel good about Louisville's chances, but I feel better, obviously, if Sydney Curry is playing well. So my prediction, I'm going to go with Virginia with a, let's say, 7 to 8 point victory. We can go like 68-60. I think that Louisville is going to keep it close and within striking distance, but ultimately at the end of the day, I think it's Virginia that comes out on top. We will obviously recap this matchup on the Monday edition of the show. But before we get out of here for the weekend, let's talk women's basketball ACC tournament action. The quarterfinal round has been set in terms of matchups. The Cardinals will square off with the 7th-seeded Miami Hurricanes. 6 o'clock Eastern tip-off in Greensboro, North Carolina. We will preview that upcoming matchup here in just a second after we talk about our friends over at BetOnline. Football might be over for the season, but basketball is in full steam for both pro and college hoops. From all the latest odds, totals, player performance props to where the next fired coach is going to land, BetOnline.net is the #1 spot for all of your sports betting needs, and it remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. It's not just basketball. BetOnline.net is your source for hockey, boxing, and UFC odds, right to the Olympic coverage and information. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Final segment of the show, the Louisville Cardinal women's basketball team will start ACC tournament play in the quarterfinal round against the 7th-seeded Miami Hurricanes. The Hurricanes just defeated the Duke Blue Devils on Thursday evening, 61-55. The second-ranked Cardinals are looking to improve upon the first matchup with the Hurricanes, in which the Cardinals were put to the test down in Coral Gables and escaped with a 69-66 victory back on February 1st. It was one of those matchups to where, look, Louisville had an 8-point lead and seemingly got a little complacent. Miami basically established a lead of their own, pushed that lead to 9. It looked like this was going to be one of those games where it was like, Louisville might be dropping this one. But thankfully, the Cards clutched up. Chelsea Hall hit a big 3-pointer in crunch time, and Louisville was able to escape with a victory. So, keys to the game for the Cardinals. When you look at this Miami team, statistically speaking, offensively, not necessarily that great of a shooting team in terms of field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. They are not even in the top 175 in the country. So, they're shooting less than 40% from the field, less than 30% from, I think they're shooting maybe actually at 30% from behind the arc. This is one of those to when you look at what happened in the first matchup and kind of help dictate how Louisville can play better in the second one. Statistically speaking, there wasn't a lot of outliers that stand out off the page. The Cardinals won the rebounding battle, had less turnovers, did shoot about half as many free throws, but they were 40% from behind the arc. They shot better from 3-point land and almost as good from the field. So when you look at Miami, it's one of those. It's a team that really kind of specializes in trying to convert on good defense to good offense. I think that with them not necessarily being a team that shoots the ball all that well, they try to do well on the boards. And I think at the end of the day, for Louisville to come out victorious in this matchup with the Hurricanes, there's 2 keys. Number 1, I think the first thing is don't get complacent, right? I think that a couple times this season we've seen Louisville kind of get a lead on teams, and that lead kind of dwindles, and it kind of keeps going back and forth. In the ACC tournament, you can't necessarily let a team linger. We've seen that throughout the past tournaments, and it's been one of those where Louisville has handled business sometimes, and sometimes they've gotten upset, not being complacent and staying on the gas, especially when you build a lead maybe in the first half or early in the second half. Staying on the gas is the number 1 key. The second key, more from a technical aspect, I like to I would like to see the Cardinals, continue to win the battle on the glass. We talked about Miami, maybe relying more so on second chance points with not shooting the ball all that well. So capitalizing on poor shooting throughout the season would be the way to go for Louisville and winning the rebounding battle. Player to watch here for Louisville in this one in the ACC tournament. There's a couple players you could go with. I'm going to go with Hailey Van Lith. I think that she has had a very, very solid ACC slate. Overall, very good year. First team All ACC selection. But now we're in the postseason. It's a different animal. Teams play a little bit harder. Their seasons are on the line, especially for a team like Miami who is 18-11 and could be fighting for a tournament bid if they could win the ACC. I'm not necessarily sure where they're at in terms of the bubble, but the Hurricanes definitely could benefit from a win against the Cardinals. Hailey Van Lith can begin to leave her mark on the postseason beginning on I was about to say Sunday, but that'd be the ACC Tournament Championship. Beginning on tonight, 6 o'clock Eastern time in Greensboro, North Carolina. I think that, with her scoring the way she has, there's no secret as to why this Louisville offense is continually reaching new heights. So Hailey Van Lith is my player to watch for in this one. The keys of the game, don't get complacent, stay on the gas, and also win the rebounding battle. So prediction for this one, I think the Cardinals win this matchup by about 10 to 12 points. Let's go with about 74-62, and the Cardinals will advance to Saturday's semifinal action. So we talked about the big recruiting weekend for the Louisville football program, and then we also previewed the upcoming men's basketball matchup against Virginia and the women's basketball matchup against Miami. We will do the recaps from this weekend's action on the episodes on next week's show. But before we get out of here, a couple quick shout-outs. First, the Cardinal Sportszone podcast. You can check that out at cardinalsportszone.com. As always, I want to say thank you for making Locked On Louisville your first listen every day. Now make your second listen Locked On NFL Draft with the NFL Combine over, the past couple days, heading through the weekend. There's no better time to check that out. Ryan Tracy and former NFL cornerback Eric Crocker bring the NFL Draft to life every day with insight and analysis on college football prospects and NFL front offices. It is free and available wherever you get your podcast. But that's going to wrap up this week of the Locked On Louisville show episodes. Thank you goes to everyone who is sharing, liking, subscribing, rating the podcast on whatever streaming service that they utilize. Definitely appreciate it. That's going to wrap up the Friday edition of the show. Everyone have a great day. Have a great weekend. Be safe. Go Cards. And we will see you right back here on Monday.